List.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. Welcome everyone to the Explosion Ninja Podcast Extra. Jess, you're good at intros. I'm terrible at intros. Do you want to take it away?
I like an intros. Well, today we are talking about a bunch of very, very exciting marketing things, including more AI, although we will be reining in Tim so he doesn't talk about too much. A YouTuber crashing OnlyFans. We're talking about this week's video, a fantastic brand that we want to talk about for Brand of the Week, a marketing fail that we spotted, and our quite interesting question of the week, which is going to be about click-through rates, I believe, Tim. Is that correct?
Yes, I also believe this. This is what we're going to talk about. I've got to be honest, Jess, I'm feeling like a bit of a wally because I was supposed to have someone come and fit a new tyre to the car this morning and been waiting all morning, had calls, expecting them to come and interrupt the call, like they do, and no one's turned up. So I'm like, okay, this is broken. Something's happened in their process. This e-commerce thing is, the booking system is obviously broken. Check the order confirmation, and it turns out I was supposed to go to them. Now there's a lesson here. They're going to have to refund me, and they're going to have to go through all the aggro and admin of going through that process. And it's all not because I didn't read the ad properly. It's because they bidded on mobile tire fitting keyword when that's not what they offer. So I've gone and clicked on it, booked, paid everything, and it's not even. So I'm gonna mention that they might want to consider their negatives list.
Yes,
and just see where it goes.
That's totally fair. I had a similar situation actually. Now that you've mentioned it, in that I'm looking for a new car, which is always a good experience. Was having a little look, wanted to just weigh up my options, see how much my car might be worth, all that. Since I did that last night, I've had 2 phone calls. One that was at 8 o'clock this morning from the same company, an email, a voicemail, and a text. Wow. I'm not ready to buy. Stop ringing me. I don't want to talk to you. And I actually texted them back and said, please stop. I'm not interested. You've put me off your business. Stop it. So
wow.
Yeah.
Bottom of funnel sales follow-up for top of funnel traffic.
Absolutely. It's just made me not want to work with them. And I feel like we speak about that a lot in the videos on the main channel about making sure that you understand where your audience is at and treating them as such, because else they might run away and hide like I am.
Yes, meet them where they're at, not where you want them to be. Yeah, I love it.
Exactly. But now we've got our personal blunders or experiences out the way. Shall we jump into the marketing news for the week?
Yes. So you mentioned ChatGPT. As you know, last week we'd been playing with ChatGPT a lot and getting really sort of into it and exploring all of the avenues. And the hype it's not dying down, is it? Twitter's been covered in it, seeing it all over YouTube, all over TikTok. Everyone's playing with ChatGPT. So I've been thinking a lot about how does this impact marketers? How does this impact people who are used to using, we've got a lot of people who listen to this and who watch our videos who are, if not reliant on search traffic, they are, they prioritize search traffic as one of their things. So trying to think about how does this ChatGPT, all the OpenAI stuff impact search? So I've been going into a bit of a rabbit hole with it. I just thought I wanted to share some updates on it because it's, I think the whole thing can feel a little bit scary. And it turns out that Google's, Google have this Lambda project that they work on. So they bought, I can't even remember the name. That's terrible. They bought this AI company in 2014, and I'm going to get stuck on the name now. They bought an AI company in 2014. They've been working with this stuff for years and years. And one of the engineers that had been working on the Lambda project said, actually, they estimate that Google's internal project is maybe 2 to 3 years further ahead than what we can see with ChatGPT, which I think was quite surprising to a lot of people. Because we don't really see much from Google, right? The reason that everyone got excited about ChatGPT is because they released this tool and everyone's playing with it and everyone's getting super excited. To know that Google has something which is more developed is really interesting and piques a lot of people's curiosity. But they said that basically there's 3 main reasons that Google hasn't already implemented this in its search engine. And these 3 are really important, and they kind of give us a little bit of a hint about maybe some of the limitations of ChatGPT for to prevent it from being a Google replacement. So the first limitation is obviously accuracy. We've all played with ChatGPT, or those who have found that there are limits to its factual accuracy, right? Apparently I'm a hedge fund manager and philanthropist with, I think, 4 kids, which was certainly a surprise. So yeah, there's the accuracy piece. Google only wants to roll out something that's going to be completely accurate. The next roadblock is the speed. So when you're using any of these software, the AI softwares, it takes a couple of seconds to get an answer back sometimes. And if you're used to using Google, obviously you're used to like speed being measured in milliseconds. It feels almost instant, which is what they're going for. Very difficult to get that with an AI. The third piece, though, is mainly a cost barrier. So Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, I think he estimated it's costing them about 2 to 3 cents to answer each question that someone puts into ChatGPT, which might not sound like a lot, but Google is doing billions of searches a day. In fact, I worked out in the back of a virtual napkin. It'd be costing Google about $250 million a day to run, if their costs were the same, to run this sort of AI answer to all the searches that are going on, because Google is very Google is has a lot of searches. A high proportion of Google searches are not monetized at all. So this is going to be a huge amount of outlay for Google to build something like this in. Now, of course, they're going to be able to pull a lever with cost. They're going to be able to reduce the cost over time. They're going to be able to improve speed over time. But I think what this does is it just shows us that actually, Google is not sort of directly threatened by this in the short term. It gives us an insight into where Google is going to go, where search is going to go. But there are some real practical limitations that will, we won't be all leaving Google in Q1 2023, because this is just going to simply be unsustainable or uneconomical to roll out. Now, that's not to say someone's not going to create an application using ChatGPT or OpenAI to recommend businesses or something like that, which is all stuff that, of course, we're looking at. But yeah, just sort of a bit of not a dampener on the hype, but we can chill out a little bit. This is going to be big, but maybe not Q1.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. We've also had a comment on the YouTube live stream from Simon saying, how will Google clamp down on the use of AI generated content? And I think sort of finding out about Project Lambda, that's I was like, there's a lot of letters in there that look like they shouldn't go together. But Google are aware of the implications that this could have in terms of like misinformation and whatnot. And with the helpful content update, Google did include some information in there about AI and how they're going to be sort of policing that and making sure that things are safe. Now, obviously, there is some limitation to that, because quite often AI content can actually look nearly the same. And if you're smart about it, you'll be using AI content in conjunction with a content marketer to make sure that what's being put out is high quality and that is correct. So that's going to make it a lot more tricky for Google to kind of identify what is made by artificial intelligence and what isn't. But I think the people, they want to give people quality and they want to give people legitimate results. And the type of websites that are just going to churn out loads and loads of not checked AI content, Google are going to be able to spot them a mile off. But I think obviously if it's being used correctly and in a high quality way, it won't be able to be spotted as easily. So that was a great question, Simon. Thank you.
Yes, it is. And I think you made a great point about the helpful content update. I think at the time we saw the helpful content update as being a very direct sort of attack or warning about AI generated content. Some of the wording is really key. I'm just on the page now. We want to ensure that more original, helpful content written by people for people in search results. Like, they're actually being very specific. We do not want AI generated content ranking. And this is one of the first updates I can remember where Google is set off since like the Panda Penguin days, where Google isn't saying if you pump out AI generated content, we're not going to rank that content. They're saying we might downgrade the entire website's ranking. So this is a penalty. This is a punishment levied on sites that, are just spewing unaltered AI garbage, basically, which, it's a good job they've got this out, because it would have unlocked the floodgates, opened the floodgates to an unparalleled amount of spam otherwise.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Another point that I just wanted to cover as well on the AI stuff, I saw this great post from Mark Ashwell on LinkedIn discussing how it's interesting that it seems like everybody's heading to our AI for creativity rather than, dull administrative jobs. And, people are panicking and saying, this is going to take our jobs, but then almost the same people are then kind of going to those creative tools and sort of training them up. And I did think that was a really, really interesting point. And yeah, it really surprised me that people have gone to it straight away for creativity rather than more menial stuff that we could be saving time on. I just wanted to know if you had any opinion on that, Tim, at all.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I think a lot of the AI, the teams behind the AI see AI as a really useful sort of sidekick to handle some of the sort of cognitive load of repetitive manual tasks. And I think AI gives us a different type of creativity, doesn't it? Because it's not necessarily true creativity. I guess true creativity is difficult to define, but it's piecing together lots of things that it's already seen out there and combining them into one place, which I guess is sort of creativity. But it's a different type of creativity. We just recorded a video last week testing AI versus human.
Excited about
on
this
a bunch of different digital marketing tasks. And it was really interesting how uncreative the AI could be if it was given very basic prompts. One of my personal bugbears on a lot of the criticism I've seen of the AI tools doing digital marketing tasks recently has been that people give it incredibly dull prompts. Write me 5 blog posts for a e-commerce store, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, look at it, it's struggling, these are all generic. I'm like, dude, your prompt is absolute garbage. If you say, write me 5 prompts for write me 5 blog posts for an iPhone case store, you're going to get trash. If you say, write me 5 blog posts for an iPhone case store that prioritizes premium materials over price and makes incredibly robust cases, and we want to answer people's objections about environmental impact, like, it can do that. So I think the output is only as good as the prompts, and a lot of people are just feeding it rubbish and then laughing as it squirms and struggles. But you feed any human rubbish, you're going to get rubbish.
I was going to say 100%. And we've just had another comment saying, do we need to upload articles weekly so that we have a chance to rank? And I can imagine things like this are the reason why AI content is becoming popular, because people feel like they do need to be just churning out content. And it's perhaps back in the day, this was the thing you needed to be doing. You needed to have the most content. But in answer to that question, no, you don't have to be getting articles out weekly. You don't need to be relying on AI to generate sort of low quality content. It's better to put something out that's longer and higher quality, that takes longer, than put something out that's just done quickly. So yeah, don't worry about needing to turn to AI to get all your content out as soon as possible, because yeah, take your time. It's fine.
For sure. You have another piece of news, Jess, that just missed my radar completely, which is why I love you on this show.
I want to preface this by saying that I did say, I'm not sure if we could talk about this on the podcast, but it's actually such a clever example of somebody really, really knowing their audience and then using it to their advantage. And this person has a reputation for knowing that they can do this and then getting their desired results. So there is a YouTuber, gaming YouTuber called Markiplier, very, very, very popular. And a few weeks ago, he said to his fans, if you get both of my podcasts, he has 2, both of my podcasts to the top of Spotify charts and Apple charts, I will make an OnlyFans. And if you don't know what OnlyFans is, it's somewhat of an adult content website. That's kind of the niche that it's found itself in. And, he knows that he has a lot of fans who would like to see that kind of content. And even though, he specified it would be tasteful, etc., etc. And as a result, both the podcasts got to the top of Spotify and Apple, and they crashed OnlyFans on the release. And I just thought that was absolutely hilarious, because OnlyFans isn't exactly a brand new platform. It has a lot of users. It's been going for a while. And it was also interesting that they weren't prepared for the amount of traffic that he would get. Maybe he wasn't even prepared. And, on top of getting the podcast to a good place, he's also using all the OnlyFans money for charity. And I just thought it was an incredible example of really knowing your audience and thinking outside the box to know what will get attention on your product, which in this case was the podcast. And I just thought that was really funny. And I'm not saying by any means that you need to be doing this, but what I'm saying is that if you really know your audience, it's absolutely fine to think outside of the box and do something that maybe other businesses in your competitors wouldn't do. whether that's just targeting more specific keywords because you've seen a lot of your audience tend to ask you those questions, even though you haven't seen your competitors writing about it. You know, there's all sorts of different things you can do. But I just thought this was a really funny example of how that can be done to an extreme and how it can work really, really well.
Yeah, I love it. And it has fun at its core, doesn't it? This is like this is an adventure thing. I think it's brilliant. It also, doesn't it just illustrate the power of community as well? How YouTube, like you say, OnlyFans is a serious deal. This is a multi-billion-dollar company. And for a YouTuber to be able to crash it by sending traffic there, stuff doesn't crash these days. But on AWS, like, what is going on? It's extraordinary.
It was ridiculous. And yeah, it was a lot of trending, a lot of discussions around it. Quite a few big publications reported on it as well, which I just thought was really funny. And it's another example of how, you know, the age of the influencer or the YouTuber is definitely not going anywhere, I don't think. And we'll probably see new faces, new content styles, but at its core, it's still a really obscure example of influencer marketing. Where the influencer is also the business, which really, really great, which it ties in really great to your next point, talking about Salesforce, Tim.
It does, yeah. So I saw a tweet this week about Salesforce. They released their income statement, and some people have picked up on the fact that Salesforce is spending about 50 times its net profit on sales and marketing. And there's a whole big discussion about what is going on here. This is absolutely ludicrous. This company is making billions and billions of dollars, and there's a tiny, tiny margin. There's lots of discussion about, is this a conscious decision, whatever. But the thread kind of went into really interesting territory and sort of showed me something I haven't really thought about. So Salesforce is a B2B CRM and sort of business application company, and the customers often aren't the people who hold the budget, right? So there's some middle manager who's deciding to get Salesforce for the team, and then they are getting the budget from somewhere centrally. And Salesforce has this annual conference, Dreamforce. And if you don't know about Dreamforce, it's wild. It's huge, beyond belief. They take over the entire San Francisco Convention Center. It's absolutely massive. Some people were making like ludicrous estimates about how much it was costing to put this thing on. I think the highest I saw was $500 million a year. That can't be right. But anyway, they get people like Fleetwood Mac and Metallica and U2 playing. And I've always looked at Dreamforce and thought, what are they doing? Why are they doing this? But one of the threads that came through this Twitter thread was that these middle managers, they would never cancel Salesforce because they knew they could get tickets to Dreamforce each year from their company, and it was going to be wild. Someone said it was like an adult summer camp. They're going to have the time of their lives, go and see these amazing gigs at this amazing scenario and like all the flights and everything. They love Dreamforce so much, even if there were better products out there, they weren't going to cancel. And it made me think about this idea of experiences. And I remember Dan Kennedy used to be a big fan of sending like a little gimmick with an offer. So he'd sell a lot to like dentists or whatever. He'd sell like marketing information to dentists. And he'd send like some little quirky thing, like a no BS button or a little bull or something like that. Anyway, these people would absolutely love it, and they buy it because of the little statuette or whatever, the little toy he was going to send. And yeah, it just made me think how sometimes the thing that we think we're selling is not the thing that we're selling. The thing that we think is retaining is not the thing that's retaining. And that as marketers, we need to be aware about how our customers are making those decisions, and making sure that we're not saying, everyone who buys Salesforce is buying it because they're going to get money or because it's going to make their life easier. Actually, they might just be buying it because they saw their friends going to Metallica gig and they want to do that too. So it just made me think and reevaluate my opinion of the sanity of running something as ludicrously lavish as Dreamforce each year.
That is so funny. So I was making a joke when I said, oh yeah, that totally ties into what I've just said about something totally different and chaotic, because I'd seen, you say about the 50xing their net profit and saw the graph, and I was like, Tim can explain that to me on the podcast. I'm not reading any further. And then you've just explained it to me. And I'm like, I did not expect that to be what you were about to say. And that is so, so interesting that they've created this experience and seen the benefits of it and just been like, yeah, all right, let's just keep doing it. And there must be more benefits to it other than, you know, people who go, will keep subscribing to us. But it's something we talk about all the time, which is your existing customers are very, very valuable. You already have them. They have to go through a process to cancel. You know, they're already making that commitment. And if you can do things, potentially not spending 500 million on a yearly event, but if there are things that you can do to keep them engaged and keep them interested in your business, I think that's that is just fascinating. Like I said, did not expect you to say that at all.
Yeah, if you can't afford to get Metallica, you know, maybe just get, I don't know, one of the Red Hot Chili Peppers or something like that. You don't need to go all the way. Like the level underneath Metallica. Yeah, that's a good place for
you
customer
pay per band member, right? That's
yeah. I think that's how they work. Yeah,
completely. So our podcast would not be complete without talking about Twitter, since this is the Twitter and AI podcast. But the news in Twitter this week was basically Twitter is potentially extending their character limit to 4,000 characters, which is a 1,300% increase in the number of characters that can be used on Twitter, which might sound really silly if you're not a Twitter user. But one of the things about Twitter has always been the character limit. You know, it was 140 and then they increased it to 200 and another number. And yeah, I just thought it was a really strange decision. Paid for blue ticks are also back, but now if you're a certain type of business or a certain type of person, you have a different color, which kind of defeats the objective. Everybody can get a blue tick. But yeah, very, very strange. It's interesting to see what happens next. And I think the lesson here really is that sometimes what you do is enough. What you offer and your main thing is actually enough. You know, Elon said he wants it to be the everything app. And yet we've seen Instagram constantly try and do this, trip up nearly every time, and have big creators, you know, some of their biggest creators on the app saying, stop doing this, stop pushing videos. This is the photo app, leave it there. So yeah, don't try and be everything to everyone. And Twitter, I think, are going to keep tripping over and having to learn this lesson over and over again until they realize that actually what they had before was fine. And they just needed to hone it.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you can understand how Elon's looking at like the WeChats of the world and thinking no one's built that in the West. Like that would be a great thing to do. But then I can't think of too many social apps or even technology companies full stop that have wildly succeeded outside the area that kind of made them big. If we think about it, like Amazon's still struggling. Amazon still can't really sell fashion. Like it's tried for years. And it's always struggling. Even though Amazon is an absolute e-commerce powerhouse, it's never quite unlocked some product categories. And you know, we see TikTok trying to get into shopping, and then they shut the shopping thing down in the UK, and then now they're going to try again in the US. And it's like, sometimes it's really difficult for these apps to go beyond the thing that makes them popular. And it's difficult to know if that's execution, if it's arrogance or what really. But yeah, I mean, Elon is not disappointing with the entertainment of this thing, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down. So
I say it's a gift that keeps on giving, but it's not a very pleasant gift, actually. It's like a gift that you don't want, that just keeps knocking on your door and being like, I've got you another one. And we're like, no, stop, please, just don't. It's like
I love the chaos.
Post.
I love the chaos.
Yeah, it is fun to watch. But moving on from marketing news, we put out a new video yesterday about digital marketing in 2023, 5 questions that you can sort of ask yourself about your marketing and 5 areas that you can probably make some improvements. And my main thing that I sort of took away from that, Tim, is I was just curious what marketing advice you would give to someone thinking of starting a business in 2023. And I know that's a big question. But if there was like one thing that you think people could take, what would it be?
And there is absolutely one thing. And someone in the comments has said, if you guys could use a pay monthly website design company as your example, your wish, Adam, is totally granted. So I think as we look at, you know, with all of our videos, everything that we do, we're looking at every digital marketing channel, SEO, content, PPC, social, email, whatever. all of it's getting more competitive. The barrier to cutting through is getting higher. The barrier of quality is getting higher. If you want to rank on the first page of Google in 2012, you could buy a website called gettothetopofgoogle.com and you would get to the top of Google when someone typed that in. Like, it was so easy. And today it's so much more difficult. You've got to put so much more work in, so much more time, energy, and money. So everything is getting more difficult. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. But I think the way that new businesses have to attack a landscape like this that is becoming more mature is by finding a message that legitimately resonates. Because if you've got something which is legitimately resonating with an audience on any of these platforms, you will get more traction, right? We talked about Google wanting to reward quality over quantity. Exactly the same, even on high velocity platforms like TikTok. So quality over quantity always wins. So the advice that I would give to any business starting in 2023 is think about what you're going to sell and make sure you're starting from the customer. This is so basic and sounds so surface level, but it's so difficult to actually follow. People start businesses, from my observations, we've reviewed tens of thousands of people start businesses because they love something, because they're obsessed with something. They get really into it. So how to market a brand new business if you're a pay monthly web design company, as an example. Often people will start a web design company because they love web design and they want to do more of this and they want to be their own boss and all of this type of stuff. I think it's the wrong approach to do it from that. Yes, it's important that you enjoy it, but you will find enjoyment in anything. What you want to do instead is figure out what is the problem that is currently not being served, or it's being served in a suboptimal way. So starting a new business saying pay monthly web design, right, maybe people really need good websites because the standard has raised for web design and conversion, but they don't want to have to pay out massive amount initially, or maybe they want a web design company that's a partner in the business or something like that. So that'll be how I'd approach it. Think about, right, who's my target customer? Where is their pain? And how can I fix that pain? And it might lead you to start a way more boring business. There are going to be so many organic skincare companies that are started next year. There's going to be so many baby clothes companies that there are going to always be so many photographers because people love photography. And that's cool. But if you want to build a business, you should really start from the customer first. And that will often lead you to, doing something that's maybe a bit more boring. So, I made this mistake as a musician. I made a drumming business because I love drumming. Well, it turns out there's only a very limited market for that thing, particularly if you're a fairly average drummer. What I should have done instead was say, okay, what's the need that I want to fill, and then build that. And the reason this is a marketing lesson is because then when you run ads, your ad is going to cut through. You're going to get higher click-through rate than your competitors because you've actually found an angle. You've found something of value that your competitors aren't going to offer. You can get more cut through on your organic content. You can get more cut through on social media. You'll get more cut through on email. You'll have a higher conversion rate because people actually want what you're offering. So that's my advice. It's a fairly long-winded way of saying don't start something just because you love it. Start something because you know that there is a demonstrated need for it and that people will pay money for it.
Absolutely. No, you've nailed it. And it's quite nice because I think that very much ties in with my brand of the week. But I definitely think it's totally cool if you love website design, but you need to find out what the need is and what the gap is in website design. We're not saying that you should just throw that idea in the bin. No. We're just saying that you need to find really what sets you apart from everyone else. And I think that's super, super important. Before we hop on to brand of the week, which, like I said, is very, very related to what you just said. We've had a question on the YouTube live asking, do you believe in working with influencers? And this also ties in really well with what Tim just said. I saw a interview recently with a business owner who said that every single Kardashian posted about their product and they had no sales from that, which I find absolutely inconceivable. I don't think that could possibly be true. But if it was true, I think then you have to start taking steps back and think, okay, are their audience the same as mine? Because maybe they weren't. Maybe, even though people like the Kardashians show a lavish life, are their followers people who have a lot of money or people who aspire to have the same money as them? That's the number one thing you need to think about. Followers are much more than, location, age, gender. You need to be thinking about why they're following this person and, how they got to that in the first place. And you also have to be thinking, maybe your product just isn't quite right, and maybe it's not good, maybe it's positioned wrong, maybe the pricing is wrong, because if you get high profile people that big, someone's going to buy. But yeah, influencers, if you just throw money at influencers, you're not going to see success, essentially.
Yeah, I'll be honest. If you've got all of the Kardashians posting about your products and you sell nothing, then I'll be questioning the analytics. And then secondly, I'll be questioning the product, because that is, that is a dead loser, right? Their audience is so broad. But I think there's another piece of this. A lot of people are falling out of love with influencer marketing as a category, because now the influencers there's like a curve in any of these, right? We saw it with Google Ads. You start very, very cheap. The media doesn't know how much it's worth. And that was exactly the same with influencers a few years ago, where you could get influencers very, very cheaply relative to their reach. Well, those days are gone, right? Influencers definitely know how much they're worth, and some of them have massively inflated perceptions of how much they're worth. Now, it's not to say all of them are, it's not to say influencers bad value, but there's less of a delta there between how much you can make from this and how much an influencer is going to charge you, because they get so many pictures and they've kind of established, what they can charge. I think one really interesting trend going forward is, rather than paying people for their influence, so paying them for their audience, we're seeing a lot of brands, we looked at Figma doing it a while ago, paying creators rather than influencers for the content that they create. So sort of paying a creator to get user-generated style content, rather than paying an influencer who will create content, but you're paying them for their influence. They're paying them for the exposure to their audience. So I think that's an interesting area to look at, and particularly with platforms like TikTok, which is the TikTok, Twitter, and AI show. Particularly with platforms like like TikTok, we see that there are so many super creative creators who are really good, who make fantastic content for brands. They don't necessarily have a massive audience, so they're not necessarily valuable from an influencer perspective, but as a content creator, paying them to do some stuff for your feed could be a great move. So that would be an area I'd look at.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Now, I keep teasing this brand of the week, so I am going to hop onto that now. Oh, sorry, I just seen a question about The Sims, which is definitely up my street. What I will say, so just to speak on that one very, very quickly. So the question was, The Sims franchise has totally nailed down how they use creators to market their products. Sorry, it wasn't a question. It was, in fact, a statement. But EA has their EA Creator Network, I believe it is, and anybody can apply to be part of that network, and they will create awesome content, whether that's good building, whether they're great at making Sims, whether they're good at making stories. Actually, I think they're called Game Changers. Maybe they changed the name of it. I don't know. But they will work with these people to create awesome stuff that then they can repurpose, and they'll host events with these people to make sure they have the tools they need. And they have sort of taken this influencer thing and kind of combined it with what Tim was talking about to make something of its own thing. And, every year I'm very much tied in with the streaming community, and I see so many people really hoping to get onto the Game Changers platform or the creators platform. It's a really big thing. People are really pushing, they're practically doing like class president type, vote for me, or this is why you should have me, or vouch for me in the comments of this post, and it's really, really interesting. They've created a desire to be a part of that, rather than just paying influencers to do it. The influencers want to get involved from the ground floor, and it's really, really clever. Thanks for mentioning that, Lydia, because that was a really, really great thing to talk about.
You love it, don't you, Jess? Yeah, you've been waiting every week for someone to mention The Sims.
completely. With that in mind, I've actually been really good this week and chosen a B2B brand for my brand of the week. If you would like me to continue with that, unless you have anything else.
I've never heard. This is new on the radar as well. I love everything I can see about this.
Yeah, completely new on my radar as well. And actually, I came across it because I was using this service. And so I think it's really interesting. So the brand of the week is called Happy Returns. It's a company that I think has just been bought by PayPal, and it is essentially an e-commerce returns company. And now I think what's been happening for a long time is that people order stuff online and then it's wrong, and then they package it up, and either a courier comes and grabs it from the door, or you will go to like a corner shop or a somewhere and just drop it off. And for some people, if they're not at home all the time or they have busy schedules, neither of these options are great, which a lot of people would think, well, they're taking it from your home. That's really convenient. And actually, when you think about it, it's not. And some research by the National Retail Federation. Nope, that's the wrong bit. I was going to talk about how there'd been studies into how people aren't happy with returns experiences, which isn't something I'd ever even thought about. Yeah, I've been disgruntled with it, but I never thought it was a widespread thing. I just thought I was being a bit, pedantic about it. And yeah, Happy Returns has decided to fill that gap by encouraging stores to sign up to be hosts for Happy Returns and having a host bar in their store where people can come and bring their returns in person and drop them off, which you might just think that's the same thing that you just described. But the difference is that you get your refund immediately rather than having to wait for the package to go from wherever you've dropped it off, or if they've collected it and arrive at the warehouse, which could take however long. You get your refund right away, which is one of the huge selling points, which I was really impressed with. Which, I mean, you might have had the same thought. Well, sorry, Tim, go ahead.
No, I wasn't going to say anything. Yeah, no, I'm just thinking.
Yeah. It's see, this is what's so fascinating about it. And you might think, okay, why would Staples, for instance, which is one that's they sell stationery and whatnot, why would they sign up to take returns from Gymshark? And the whole thing is that they're finding that when people go into these stores to do their returns, they're then spending in that store. So these stores are getting footfall because of another business by making that business's life easier. And then they're getting more customers, which I just thought, because I was like, I don't understand what's in it for these host businesses. And turns out there's actually quite a lot in it. And, a lot of businesses and even smaller businesses who might not be, they don't have the same clout as Gymshark are able to almost connect with those customers, which was really, really cool. So there was that as well. And then the other thing, which I just thought was awesome about it, is that it integrates with platforms like Shopify. And when people go to return, let's say they have a shirt and it was too big and they want to order a smaller one, or maybe some people would just be like, I'm just going to return it, whatever. But when you do it via Happy Returns, the customer is prompted, how can we solve this? And they'll be offered, if the thing that they said about it was that it was too big, the next page will offer them, would you like to order it in a smaller size? Or if they said it was the wrong color, they'll say, here's the 5 other colors we have in stock. Rather than straight away going, here's your refund, they're sort of bringing people back into that cycle and making suggestions based on their preferences. And I was like, it just keeps going. It's just absolutely fascinating. And it's a perfect example of, like we were saying, we've got a business doing returns, which is not a new thing. You can do returns via a whole load of different areas, whether it's these little Amazon lockers or Every comes and picks a package up at your house and then throws it over the wall behind them. There's all these different things. And they were like, how can we make a business that can profit off of this huge returns industry and help businesses and help customers? And they found that niche. And that's what really appealed to me about them. I thought that was so interesting.
It is. And on the one hand, I'm like, this is a genius solution to a really painful problem. And it's exactly what we're talking about, where when you want to start a business, you wouldn't be like, oh, what I'm really passionate about? What do I love? What would I do if I won the lottery today? What would I spend the rest of my life doing? I'd spend it processing returns.
No
completely. One would ever say that, but this is a great idea for a business because returns are so painful for so many companies. I do think that there is a bigger issue with return rates in general. We see, a massive company like Primark in the UK won't sell online because of the returns. They've got, it's just damn it, their cost, they just can't sustain it. And there are other e-commerce fashion retailers where 30% of their stuff is coming back. That is potentially an unsustainable business model. And then they can't often just resell this stuff straight away. So they have to build the cost of returns into the product. So huge inefficiencies there before we even think about carbon footprint and stuff like this. So I think at some point, someone is going to figure out figure out a solution to stop this problem at source.
Yes.
But until they do that, until we can visualize the item in our homes, until we have AR that enables us to try stuff on properly, then this seems like a really great approach to How do I fix something that's really painful? And it's a messy, difficult problem as well.
Yeah.
For people thinking about starting businesses, you'll be tempted to go for like, oh, well, this seems really simple. No, go for the stuff that's icky, that's gross, that no one wants to play with. Like manufacturing, like some weird thing, or like processing returns is the unsexiest thing in the world. But guess what? From a marketer's perspective, advertising stuff like this is great because there's so little competition for it. If you want to advertise like some, vegan beauty products, absolutely carnage. Huge CPAs. You're going to go negative on the first purchase. Stuff like this, you'll be profitable with on your first acquisition. So, yeah, it's a super interesting business. Absolutely love it.
Definitely. I've never even thought of that, Tim. That's a very good point. And I know there are some businesses, like e-commerce businesses, that have more accurate size guides, or they will, if you're logged in and you've inputted your measurements, then it will make recommendations for you, which obviously are some attempts to reduce the rate of returns. But you were saying about the numbers. I think, there's some information from the National Retail Federation that I nearly read out at the beginning that was totally irrelevant. But apparently consumers returned $428 billion worth of products in 2020. And that was just over 10% of retail sales. And the cost of returns to businesses as a whole was 101 billion. So yeah, like you said, it's making it easier to do returns when actually maybe businesses want it to be difficult.
Yeah, right, exactly. And you see a lot of businesses now who are, reducing the free returns thing. They're making people jump through hoops. You want to try and return something to Lululemon? Freaking good luck, right? You got to negotiate with the UPS hotline on your own to, difficult. So there are companies that are trying to get around this. There's been a couple of questions in the comments, and we try not to do too much sort of reactive stuff, but there's a couple of questions which sort of tie into this, right? So we talked there about how you'd market a business like this, and the fact that it's a new solution to an established problem. So this returns are something that's incredibly painful for companies, but they might not necessarily know that something like this exists. So how would you market a business like that, where you have a solution, but it's a brand new thing, like you're one of one? One of our most famous sort of client exits was a software company that we worked with before the founder had even had I think they'd had the idea. We worked with them in their previous company. They came out, they started their own thing. We worked with them all the way through to a £26 million cash exit. And that business was the first in its space to do what it did. So that campaign had two phases. The first phase was we had to get in front of people that didn't think they had this problem, or they didn't know that they had this problem. And then once we'd established that, this thing was a thing and there was plenty of talk and people knew to search for it, then we could market it as its, as its primary keyword. But in the early days, your goal is all about raising awareness. And how do you market a business that someone doesn't know exists? Like, Jess said this, or Jess has written in her notes that their blog content is targeting problems that people do know they have. So if I'm an e-commerce brand, I know I want to reduce my return rate. I know I want to simplify my returns process. I might be thinking about outsourcing my returns. So I don't necessarily know that there's this solution, there's this whole network of returns people and all this type of stuff, but I do know that I want to reduce my return rate. So if I'm marketing a business like this, I'm going all out on that keyword, because that shows that someone has a problem. They are in pain. They're saying, help me, I need to fix this. And my article is the most in-depth, comprehensive article on how to reduce return rate. I'm starting the return rate podcast. I'm making videos all about how do we reduce this scourge of our business, this cancer in e-commerce? How do we reduce this return rate? And I'm going all in. I'm completely owning that term, because I know that everyone coming into that is a potential customer for me. And then in the course of that process, while I'm teaching them about, like, here's some ways that you'd reduce your return rate. And by the way, you're always going to get a certain amount of returns, and we make that certain amount more, palatable. We take that stuff out of your hands. So click here to sign up for our whatever. So yeah, that's how you do it. There's no point trying to sell to people that don't even, they don't even feel like they have. Well, no, I'm going to rephrase that. If you're selling to someone that doesn't even know they have a problem at all, right? You're selling like a black mud face mask. Well, I don't know I've got a problem with that, so I'm not searching for that. But you might want to show that on social, right? That's an interruption piece of advertising where it's like, oh, you're trying to trigger an impulse purchase. But if you're trying to sell something that's a bit more sort of meaningful, has higher cost, then that is a, what's the problem that you are solving, even if they don't know about your solution.
Yeah, completely. I think the other thing to think about as well is if you have come up with an idea and you're like, we're going to make this thing because I need it, make sure that other people need it too. Do some market research, talk to people, ask people online, get people together and just show them. Be like, what do you think of this? And if they go,
yeah,
literally never needed that in my whole life, that's a waste of time, then you sort of avoid spending all this money on developing something that isn't great. And this is a good example for even established businesses. We see it all the time that companies try and do something new that just hasn't been researched. And then they're like, why did this fail? Yeah, because you didn't speak to anyone about it.
I think it was John Carlton who used the copywriter. We had him on the podcast. I think when he was testing copy, he'd go to a bar and he'd read his copy out to like random people. And the response that he wanted wasn't like, oh yeah, that's great copy. The response he wanted was like, where do I get this thing? He actually wanted to be able to sell them on. And it's exactly the same. Like if you're explaining your business to people who are potential customers, you don't want them to go, oh yeah, that sounds like a cool idea. You want them to be like, wow, that sounds sick. Like, where do I sign up? Like, if you could do that, wow, can you actually do that? I'd really, really love that. That's what you want.
Definitely. That was a good, very, very good discussion. But we are going to move on to our marketing fail of the week, which is actually kind of relevant to a bunch of stuff we talked about today, which is to do with something called Bored Ape Yacht Club, which if people don't know what that is, there's going to be a lot of words that I'm about to say that are going to be confusing, and that's fine. But there's definitely a marketing story at the crux of this, even if you don't understand it. But the Bored Ape Yacht Club creates something called NFTs, non-fungible tokens, which basically artwork kind of that's also on the blockchain related to cryptocurrency. And do you know what? I know a lot about this, but it's so hard to explain without really spending time to explain it, and it was born from a place of trying to give copyright and give, the same level of, I don't know what to call it, the Mona Lisa, that's the original, that it's worth loads and you're going to pay less if you buy it from a little shop that sells prints of art. That's what they were trying to do. And then it got really out of hand and got really shady. And now most of the discussion is about the negativity. And the negativity in this instance is to do with celebrities, influencers, being very heavily involved in the project, promoting these pieces of artwork and not disclosing that they were paid to do this. And also things kind of going round the back and paying people in kind of a not really obvious way. And there was just a lot of shadiness. And it seems to have, there's been discussions, I've been following it for a couple of years now, discussions from the moment these people promoted this about whether it was legitimate, whether things were being above board. And that was kind of, it's all sort of come to a head and come mainstream now in terms of these lawsuits. So thoughts, Tim? You look quite flabbergasted.
Oh mate, don't get me started. I think crypto marketing has been fascinating to watch. I remember when I moved down to London at the start of lockdown, and Luke and I would go, he likes trains, so we go on the underground trains and saw all these ads for crypto everywhere. And I thought it was absolutely fascinating that so much money had poured into this space so quickly, and the marketing just expanded to fill all of the gaps. And it was really interesting to see how loose regulations were around crypto marketing. There were people making, unproven claims, like big unproven claims on the side of buses and on trains and stuff. And influencers getting involved, influencers promoting stuff without the proper, designation of it being ads and stuff like that. And there was a sense that, wow, all of this is, whatever happens to crypto, all this advertising stuff, someone's going to take issue with this at some point. The ASA and all these, the organizations that are responsible for policing ads, this is going to kick off. Someone in the comments is saying, always do your own research. These celebs will shill anything. And I think the real danger when something like this happens, where cryptocurrencies or whatever are being promoted by celebrities, is that this damages the influencer marketing model for everyone. If somebody is saying, always do your own research, these celebs will shill anything, that damages, right? And you're right, they technically will, or some of them will, but that damages it for everyone else. Because that, if you now see that Madonna was yesterday posting some Bored Ape Yacht Club thing, and then today she's posting some like skin ointment, well, does the second one look like the scam if the first one felt a bit like a scam? Like it's just messy. It's messy and icky, and I think if you're going to stand out in this space, it's quite easy to stand out by being completely reputable, by showing you're working out and just doing stuff above board.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, sort of on the other side of the coin, is that you just don't be shady. Like, there's rules in place, and huge businesses like this know that there's rules in place, and they know that celebrities are supposed to, say when they are, doing a promotion. And it is, at the same time, on the plate of the influencers to say, I'm not doing that. But there's so much stuff. There's so much that goes into it. It's to do with their agent. And, if there's the agent and then the agent saying to the celebs, yeah, you can promote this on your show to millions of people. We've covered it. It's fine. You don't need to say it's an ad. We've got it handled. Then there's all these other things, right? Because I think all these celebs involved were all part of the same management agency. And the main thing that I took away from this is that there's been so many shady people and shady practices across the crypto industry in the last year that it's caused so much damage, because there are bad players, unfortunately. And because of things like this, even, Bored Ape is one of the sort of more established ones who hasn't really had that many scandals, really, compared to others. People have got what they asked for. They haven't put money in to get nothing, that, and it's been fairly steady. I think it's crashed, but because the whole of crypto has, so everybody's gonna, go down for however long that is. But there's just been a lot of bad players that unfortunately have caused that crash and ruined it for everyone. And it's like, Tim knows my opinion. I'm not a fan of the crypto space, and I'm not a fan of the NFT space because of the way that it's being used. I'm still at a point where I do a lot of research, watch a lot of content, and I'm still like, what's the point other than to scam people? And that shouldn't be the message that we're getting across. And if you want widespread adoption, my mum's not going to look at this, or other friends that I have aren't going to look at this, who aren't watching a million videos like me and think that's reputable when they constantly hear about scams and bad things. And it's not good.
It's not good. I think this reminds me of, there are certain industries that we've worked with over the years where there is a sort of general bad reputation. And, PPI was one, right? So we worked with, when PPI was kicking off, whenever that was a few years ago, we worked with some PPI companies and got fantastic results for them. And it's absolutely going to be the same sort of thing with crypto. So at the moment, crypto has like this bad sort of negative cloud around it. That doesn't mean that all crypto businesses are doomed. That doesn't mean that, crypto as a concept is doomed at all. It just means that the threshold for trust is that much higher. So you just need to do everything that you possibly can to I'd address some of these concerns head on. Is it a scam? Might be something that you might want to have on your homepage, and you're going to answer that convincingly. And that type of thing. Completely. It's just that the bar is raised. So it's the whole thing is just combusted, and I think it's interesting to watch.
Absolutely. And it is, it's definitely got to a point where now, if you did want to do something legitimately, you're going to be considered to, not be legitimate at all. Yes. Finally, for today, we have our marketing question of the week, which I believe you prepared, Tim, if you would like to go ahead with that one.
Someone asked a great question on YouTube about their emails. So we talked about emails, and email being a sort of key pillar still in 2023. One of the things that you absolutely need to be doing is automating email sequences and all this sort of stuff. And someone asked a great question. They said, I've got, I think, 1,400 on my email list, but this applies to email lists of any size. And every time I send an email out, I'm only getting 10 opens, or I'm getting 10 visits on my website. So, what's going on? Where's this thing failing? I thought it was a great question. It's also a very common question. And When you're looking at your email deliverability, you basically want to follow the line to see where it's breaking, right? When you're looking at your email marketing performance, you want to follow the line to see where it's breaking. So the first thing to check is how many of your emails are actually bouncing. Like, is the 1,400 people or the 14,000 or 140,000, however many you've got, how many of them are actually legit? Are you getting hard bounces? Are these email addresses no longer active? The second thing I would look at is what's the open rate. So if you're getting an open rate of, say, 20 to 35%, typically that's pretty good. You can get open rates even higher. We've got clients that are getting open rates of over 70% if they've got a really hot list and they've got a really sort of strong brand that people really connect with. If you're getting a really low open rate of, say, like sub 10% or something like that, that can imply that there's some sort of deliverability issue. Either you're landing in promotions tab or you're landing in a spam folder, or the list is just really old. They've forgotten who you are. They don't really care about the thing anymore. If you're getting decent opens, you then look at click-through rate in your email. So if you're getting a decent click-through rate, like say 10, 20, 30%, well, that shows that the thing you're actually offering in that email is enticing enough to get people to act. If you've got a really low click-through rate, it just means that the thing you're offering in your email isn't exciting enough for people to act. So you just got to follow that chain down to work out where it's broken. But I think there's a lot of lessons for all of us with email marketing, because the temptation is that we just send emails out to our audience and we never really take the time to go through the stats and look at, okay, what are people actually liking? Let's compare my click-throughs on this email versus this email that took a different approach and find out what my audience is really engaged with. So I just thought it was an interesting conundrum and something that is very timely as we come up to Christmas and our email inboxes are stuffed with last-minute offers.
Absolutely. I've unsubscribed from so many email lists this week because there's definitely been some, where they've forgotten about us for the year and then all of a sudden they're just appearing in my inbox. I'm like, I don't even remember who you are. So I think, that's a really, really great point. If you do have a marketing question, by the way, you can send us an email at hello@exposureninja.com with the subject line podcast extra and drop your questions through and we will answer them on the podcast. It's also important for you to know that if you're having trouble with your own marketing, you should definitely head over to the Exposure Ninja website. You can see at the top of the screen now, exposureninja.com/review. We will give you a very cool, very in-depth review of your website and your marketing. And there are also tons of resources on our website as well. So if you had any questions that haven't been answered today or things that are more specific, head over to our website and head to our blog to have a look at those. Anything else you would like to add, Tim, before we close out?
No, thanks, Jess. As always, thanks everyone for tuning in. See you next week.
See you next week.